Vanquished is the #1 online addiction recovery program. Learn how to end any addiction through our proving recovery system. The first principle in our program is honesty. Making the decision to be honest is just the beginning. It can be scary but also liberating to let go of denial and the dishonest behavior that comes with addiction. Committing to rigorous honesty is a challenge, but the rewards make it worth the effort. It will take time to earn respect and trust of people we may have hurt in our addiction, but through the consistency of working our recovery program you will learn how to apply honesty in all areas of your life. In recovery, it requires rigorous honesty to admit the extent of our addiction. We accept honesty. We also accept and surrender to the idea that our way has not worked for us. This promotes ego deflation. Surrender means moving over to the winning side. Principle 1. We admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. It doesn't matter what or how much we used. During the Vanquished program, staying clean has to come first. We realize that we cannot use and live. When we admit our powerlessness and the inability to manage our own lives, we open the door to recovery. No one could convince us that we were addicts. It is an admission that we had to make for ourselves. When some of us have doubts, we ask ourselves this question: can I control my use of any form of mind or mood-altering chemicals? Most will see that control is impossible the moment it is suggested. Whatever the outcome, we find that we cannot control our using for any length of time. This would clearly suggest that an addict has no control over their addiction. Powerlessness means using against our will. If we can't stop, how can we tell ourselves we are in control? The inability to stop using, even with the greatest willpower and the most sincere desire, is what we mean when we say, we have absolutely no choice. However, we do have a choice after we eliminate all the things we have been telling ourselves to justify our using. We didn't stumble into this fellowship brimming with love, honesty, open-mindedness, or willingness. We reached the point where we could no longer continue because of physical, mental, and spiritual pain. When we were beaten, we became willing. Our inability to control our usage of drugs is a symptom of the disease of addiction. We are powerless not only over drugs, but our addiction as well. We need to admit this in order to recover. Addiction is a physical, mental, and spiritual disease, affecting every area of our lives. The physical aspect of our disease is the compulsive use of drugs, the inability to stop using once we have started. The mental aspect of our disease is the obsession, or overpowering desire, which leads us to using even when it has destroyed our lives. The spiritual part of our disease is our total self-centeredness. We felt that we could stop whenever we wanted to, despite all evidence to the contrary. Denial, substitution, rationalization, justification, distrust of others, guilt, embarrassment, dereliction, degradation, isolation, and loss of control are all results of our disease. Our disease is progressive, incurable, and fatal. Most of us are relieved to find out we have a disease instead of a moral deficiency. We are not responsible for our disease, but we are responsible for our recovery. Most of us tried to stop using on our own, but we were unable to live with or without drugs. Eventually we realized that we were powerless over our addiction. Many of us tried to stop using on sheer willpower, and this turned out to be a temporary solution. We saw that willpower alone would not work for any length of time. We tried countless other remedies: psychiatrists, hospitals, recovery houses, lovers, new towns, new jobs. Everything we tried, failed. We began to see that we had rationalized the most outrageous sort of nonsense in order to justify the mess drugs had made of our lives. Until we let go of all our reservations, the foundation on which our recovery is based is in danger. Reservations, no matter what they are, rob us of obtaining all the benefits this program has to offer. In ridding ourselves of all reservations, we surrender. Then, and only then, can we be helped to recover from the disease of addiction. Now, the question is, if we are powerless, How can the Vanquished program help? It starts by us asking for help. The foundation is the admission that we, of ourselves, have no power over addiction. When we can accept this, we have completed the first part of step 1. A second admission must be made before the foundation is complete. If we stop here, we will know only half the truth. We are great ones for manipulating the truth. We might say on one hand, yes, I am powerless over my addiction, and on the other hand, when I get my life together, I can handle drugs. Such thoughts and actions led us back to active addiction. It never occurred to us to ask, if we can't control our addiction, how can we control our lives? We felt miserable without drugs. Unemployability, dereliction, and destruction are easily seen as characteristics of an unmanageable life. Our families generally are disappointed, baffled, and confused by our actions and often have deserted or disowned us. Becoming employed, socially acceptable and reunited with our families does not make our lives manageable. Social acceptability does not equal recovery. We have found that we had no choice except to completely change our old ways of thinking or go back to using. When we give our best, it works for us as it has worked for others. When we could no longer stand our old ways, we began to change. From that point forward, we can see that every clean day is a successful day, no matter what happens. Surrender means not having to fight anymore. We accept our addiction and life the way it is. We become willing to do whatever is necessary to stay clean, even the things we don't like doing. Until we took step 1, we were full of fear and doubt. At this point, many of us felt lost and confused. We felt different. Upon working this step, we affirmed our surrender to the principles of the Vanquished program, and only then did we begin to overcome the alienation of addiction. Help for addicts begins only when we are able to admit complete defeat. This can be frightening, but it is the foundation on which we have built our lives. Step 1 means that we do not have to use, and this is a great freedom. It took a while for some of us to realize how unmanageable our lives had become. For others of us, this was the only thing of which we could be sure. We knew in our hearts that drugs had the power to change us into something that we didn't want to be. Being clean and working this step, we are released from our chains. However, none of the steps work by magic. We do not just say the words of this step, we learn to live them. We see for ourselves that the program has something to offer us. We have found hope. We find that we can learn to function in the world we live in. We, too, can find meaning and purpose in life and be rescued from insanity, depravity, and death. When we admit our powerlessness and inability to manage our own lives, we open the door for a power greater than ourselves to help us. It is not where we were that counts, but where we are going. For help, contact the Vanquished program. Module 1, First Principle in Step 1. Honesty. Presented by Reverend Donald Kinnard.